بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد سيد المرسلين وخاتم النبيين وعلى آله وأصحابه الطيبين الطاهرين ومن اتبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ولا شبيه ولا مثيل له ولا ضد ولا ند ولا جسد ولا صورة ولا أعضاء له. كان الله ولا مكان فهو الآن على ما عليه كان. فلا تضربوا لله الأمثال ولله المثل الأعلى. تنزه ربي عن الجلوس والقعود وعن الحركة والسكون وعن الاتصال والانفصال. لا يحل فيه شيء ولا ينحل منه شيء ولا يحل هو فيه شيء، لأنه ليس كمثله شيء. مهما تصورت بذلك فالله لا يشبه ذلك. ومن وصف الله بمعنى من معاني البشر فقد كفر. وأشهد أن سيدنا وعظيمنا وقائدنا وقرة أعيننا محمدا عبد الله ورسوله ونبيه وصفيه وحبيبه وخليله، أرسله الله هدى ورحمة للعالمين هاديا ومبشرا ونذيرا وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه سراجا وهاجا وقمرا منيرا. اللهم صل وسلم وأعظم وأنعم وأكرم على هذا النبي الكريم كلما ذكره الذاكرون وغفل عن ذكره الغافلون. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا حبيب الله. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا عظيم الجاه. I praise Allah, I glorify Him and I thank Him for all the blessings that He gives without Him being obligated to give anything. And I ask Allah Ta'ala to raise the rank of our beloved Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and to protect his Muslim nation. I testify that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah Ta'ala, the one without a partner, the one without a similar, the one without an equal, the one who is unlike anything in the universe and nothing in the universe is like Him. He has no father, no mother, no sister, no brother, no son, and no daughter. He exists without time and place because He is the creator of time and place. He does not reside above the throne like the Christians say, and he is not attributed with fatigue like the Jews say. Our Lord is glorified beyond any imperfection that the non-Muslims attribute to him. Whatever you imagine in your mind, Allah Ta'ala is different than that, does not resemble that. And whoever attributes an attribute of the creation to Allah is not a Muslim. And I testify that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the son of Abdullah, the son of Abdul Muttalib, the son of Hashim, the son of Abdul Manaf from the tribe of Quraysh, is the best creation of Allah and his final prophet and messenger, sent to all humans and jinn, and he is truthful about everything that he conveyed of the revelation. Thereafter, we remind ourselves to have the sincere intention for the sake of Allah in attending the session of Islamic knowledge, because having the sincere intention is a requirement to get the reward. So the Muslim, whenever he does a good deed, he has to have the sincere intention for the sake of Allah to get reward for that good deed. The reward is defined as the compensation that the Muslim receives in the hereafter for the good deeds that he did in this life among what makes him happy. An example of the reward that is guaranteed to the righteous Muslim in the grave is that his grave is expanded approximately 105 feet by 105 feet, and his grave is illuminated with a light similar to the light of the full moon, and the fragrance of paradise will be present in the grave. The sincere intention means for the Muslim to do the good deed seeking the acceptance of Allah only and not the praise of the people. So alhamdulillah, we are back. It's been a few weeks since we've had this class. The last time we had this class was on a Friday, and then the next day after that, there was the condolence gathering for someone that was deceased from the community, and there was the burial and the prayer, and then after that the condolence gathering. So because of that, I wasn't able to make it that day after the Saturday. After that last Friday that we had class. And then the following weekend, there was the camps in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, which were very beneficial. There was a youth camp that they benefited from, the kids benefited from a lot. And then there was the main camp after that with our Sheikh Samir, Hafidahullah, and another great Sheikh, his name is Sami, Hafidahullah, and it was very beneficial. So that was, basically the 3 weeks, and now we're here. So we're continuing reading from the Lucid Word. We're on page 23, and right in the middle of the page from the explanation is 7 lines down. We are right at where the author says, because these 13 attributes were mentioned many times in the Islamic texts. Now up till here, the author has listed the 13 attributes that every accountable person is obligated to know and explained them. And so we talked about each of them, and we spoke about all of them. And now after the author has explained those 13 attributes, then he's going to explain, because these 13 attributes were mentioned many times in the Islamic texts, meaning Al-Quran and the Hadith, those are the Islamic texts. As mentioned before, this was already mentioned before, that these 13 attributes were mentioned many times there. The scholars said that knowing them is a personal obligation upon every accountable person. And that's the reasoning, the Islamic reasoning, behind the fact that it's a personal obligation. because they were mentioned many times in the Islamic texts, in the Quran and the Hadith. So the scholars, they deduce that it is a personal obligation upon every accountable person. They also said, now what does that mean, that it's a personal obligation upon every accountable person to know that? It means that every accountable person has to know that about these attributes. And he has to know their meaning, what they mean. He has to know that Allah knows everything. He has to know that Allah sees everything without exception. And without that being, without an instrument and without a tool and without an organ. He has to know that Allah has power over all things. And what does that mean? It means that the person, they cannot be ignorant about this. They cannot say, I don't know if the Creator knows everything or not. I don't know if the Creator has power over everything or not. They can't be ignorant about it. They have to be sure, certain, that the Creator knows everything, that the Creator sees everything, that the Creator hears everything, without an organ, without an instrument. The person has to be sure that the Creator is attributed with life. The person can't say, I wonder, is the Creator alive or dead? Right? They can't have that. They have to know for sure that the Creator is attributed with life. They have to know for sure that the Creator is attributed with will. And they have to know that this Creator that we worship, the only Creator, the Creator of the universe, that He's attributed with these attributes. They can't be ignorant about that in the sense that they can't say, well, I don't know if that's the case or not. Whoever says, I don't know if that's the case or not about any of these attributes, they wouldn't be a Muslim. They would not be a Muslim. Whoever says, I'm not sure if the Creator knows everything. I'm not sure if the Creator has power over everything. I'm not sure if the Creator sees everything. The person would not be a Muslim, regardless of their situation. Whether they just learned about Islam yesterday or 5 minutes ago or 1 second ago, whether they never heard it from someone, they were never taught this, or whether they grew up far away from Muslims or integrated into a Muslim community, whoever is ignorant about these attributes is not a Muslim. They cannot be a Muslim. Because the Muslim, he has to know with certainty that Allah knows everything, that Allah sees everything. So that part is clear about that part? No. Now sometimes, let's say, a person would not hear these specific terminologies. They wouldn't hear, for example, Allah is attributed with knowledge, Allah is attributed with power. But the person in their heart, they know that, for example, Allah knows everything, that Allah has power over everything. And this is not, the person would be a Muslim in this case, because they know it. They know that he's never heard these specific words or terminologies. Now there's one case which is a very marginal case, it's a very singular case, it's a very rare case. Except for the attribute of existence. This case that I'm about to mention does not include the attribute of existence. We're talking about the other attributes other than existence. This specific rare case. In the rare case where a person, it never crossed their mind at all about for example, Allah being attributed with sight. It never crossed their mind. But the moment that it did, obviously, they confirmed that this is the case. But it's in the scenario where a person never thought about it before. It never crossed their mind. This notion, it never came up to them. But they never denied that Allah has attributed with sight. They never said Allah is blind, for example. In this case, when it never crossed their mind, without them denying and without them doubting, and other than the case of, and other than the attribute of existence, they are still judged as Muslims. Is that marginal case clear? That one? In the case of existence, if it never crossed somebody's mind that Allah exists, they're not Muslim. And other than the attribute of existence, if it never crossed somebody's mind, those terms, Allah is attributed with knowledge. But they never denied it, and they never doubted that Allah is attributed with knowledge. They're still Muslim. But obviously they fall short for not learning these attributes. And yeah, they're still sinful. Clear on that? Which one? Yeah, for other than the attribute of existence, if it never crossed someone's mind, and they never thought about it, and it's never something that came up to them in their mind, without doubting and without denying, then they're still Muslim. They will still be judged as Muslim, but they will be sinful for falling short in learning. Because we're supposed to learn these. We have to know these. We have to know with certainty that Allah is attributed with them. Now the scholars, they continue to say, since eternity has been affirmed to the being of Allah by textual and mental proofs, His attributes must be eternal, because the origination of an attribute entails that the attributed being is originated. And I'm going to go back and explain that, but I want to go to this footnote first before we go further. It's right where it says, since eternity has been affirmed to the being of Allah, there's a footnote there. It says, the being of Allah is a translation of the Arabic term Dhatullah. It is commonly employed by scholars of Islamic doctrine as a way to clarify that Allah has independent and necessary existence, and He is attributed with attributes of perfection. In the words of the scholars, Allah is a being who has attributes. In previous translations of the summary, self was used instead of being. The reason self was replaced is because it is not linguistically used with the meaning that it is intended here, or that is intended here. And then if you look at the linguistic meaning of the word self in English, it's not the same meaning that they want to use here with the term Dhatullah. So even though before they used the word self, translating the word that, now we're using the word being instead of the word that. And what's meant by it is that Allah Ta'ala has independent, yani not needing others, and necessary existence. And His existence is not, it is without needing others, and the mind judges that His existence has to be. Yani the mind judges that the non-existence of Allah is mentally unacceptable. So the mind judges that the existence of Allah is necessary. And the scholars, they say that in Arabic, they say Allah Ta'ala Dhatun Muttasifun Bisifat. Dhatun Muttasifun Bisifat. Yani, it's just explaining why being is used instead of self. Now back to this case here. Since eternity has been affirmed to the being of Allah, to the that of Allah, by textual and mental proofs, His attributes must be eternal, because the origination of an attribute entails that the attributed being is originating. So what is it saying here? It's saying that we've already confirmed and through the textual proofs, through the verses of the Quran and through the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that Allah Ta'ala has no beginning, eternal, no beginning. We already confirmed and established and emphasized and reiterated that Allah Ta'ala has no beginning. His being has no beginning. And since that is the case, since it is the case that the being of Allah has no beginning, then His attributes must be eternal. And it's necessary that His attributes also have no beginning. That His attributes also have no beginning. Why? Because the origination of an attribute entails that the attributed being is originated. What does that mean? That means because if it was the case that something has an attribute that has a beginning, if there is something that exists that has an attribute that has a beginning, then that means that that thing that has that attribute also has a beginning. Whatever has an attribute that has a beginning, it itself has a beginning. That's how we, for example, we judge for sure about things that we have not seen begin, that they have a beginning. For example, how do we judge for sure that the universe has a beginning, even though we weren't there to witness the beginning of it? We know that the universe has a beginning for sure because the universe changes. So those changes that occur in the universe, they tell us 100% without a doubt that the universe has a beginning. How? Because the universe is attributed with change. And whatever is attributed with change, then it itself has a beginning. Whatever has attributes that have a beginning, then it itself has a beginning. So that's how we judge things that have a beginning that we didn't see their beginning. So we say about Allah Ta'ala that He has no beginning. He Himself, His being has no beginning. Therefore, it has to be, the mind judges it's necessary that His attributes also have no beginning. Why? Because had His attributes had a beginning, then it would mean, it would entail, it would constitute, it would dictate that the being of Allah would also have a beginning. If He's attributed with something that has a beginning, then He Himself has to have a beginning. That's what the meaning of that statement is. And this is something that can be known using the mind. And the scholars of Islam, they also proved it using the Islamic proofs. Reading on, it says, which means that the being changes from one state to another. That's what an attribute that has a beginning, that's what that means. If you have an attribute, let's say that starts, that means you change from one state to another. Like for example, if you were ignorant of something and then you knew, and then you learned something, now your knowledge has increased. So your attribute of knowing something began. That means you change from one state to another. And anything attributed with change is in need of someone that brings about this change. The change, because change, it has to happen through a catalyst. Change has to happen through an initiation. It has to be initiated. And this initiation, it doesn't take place on its own. The initiation, the starting, doesn't take place on its own. It's something that has to be done. By who? It can't be done by the thing itself, because that thing itself is, for example, in the state of non-existent, or that thing itself is non-existent, so it can't make itself have that attribute. So that initiation has to be done by someone else. And once that initiation, or once that attribute or that change takes place in the thing, and that means it was that attribute that it was given or that it changed to, that means that it was given to them. This change was brought about in them, and it was done to them. And so anyone attributed with change cannot be an eternal God. Rather, they are an originated creation. And that's what it comes down to. Our whole creed is La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah. The first part of it is no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah, and the Creator. So that means everything other than Allah is a creation. And what does that mean, that they're creation? It means that they have a beginning, that they were originated, that they have a starting point, that they're in need of someone to make them be, to make them exist. They were nothing, and then they became something. How did they become something? They became something because they were created. So if they're created, they cannot be an eternal God. Since it has been definitely proven by reason that Allah is eternal, His attributes too must be eternal. By this, the author completed the discussion about the first testification and its explanation. So, up till here, we have finished talking about Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah and explaining what pertains to it. Are there any questions regarding this? No? Wait. Muhammad, Babaj, come sit over here. Come sit up front. Now, continuing on. After that, the author began discussing the meaning of the second testification. He said, the meaning of the second testification, which is Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, I testify that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, is I know, believe, and accept in my heart and declare with my tongue that Muhammad, the son of Abdullah, who is the son of Abdul Muttalib, who is the son of Hashim, who is the son of Abdul Manaf, who is the son of Qusay, who is the son of Kilab, who is the son of Murrah, who is the son of Ka'b, who is the son of Lu'ay, who is the son of Ghalib, who is the son of Fihr, who is the son of Malik, who is the son of An-Nadr, who is the son of Kinana, who is the son of Khuzaymah, who is the son of Mudrika, who is the son of Ilyas, who is the son of Mudar, who is the son of Nizar, who is the son of Ma'ad, who is the son of Adnan, from the tribe of Quraysh, the most noble Arabian tribe. He is the slave of Allah and His messenger to all humans and jinn. So essentially, when you say, I know, believe, and accept in my heart and declare with my tongue that Muhammad is the slave of Allah and His messenger to all humans and jinn, we mean this specific Muhammad with this specific lineage. And up till here, from Abdullah, which is the Prophet's father, to Adnan, the scholars of genealogy, they all agree about this order of names. So this is confirmed and established, and they agree about the names of the Prophet's forefathers, alayhi salatu wasalam, up until Adnan. About that order they agree. And then The scholars of genealogy, they mentioned a lineage from Adnan to Abraham, and from Abraham to Adam. The Prophet ﷺ is from the tribe of Quraysh, which is the most noble Arabian tribe. And it should be noted that the Prophet ﷺ, he is the best of the best of the best of the best. So he comes from the lineage of Abraham through Ishmael, and from these bloodlines, he is considered the best of the best of the best of the best. And throughout the entire lineage of the Prophet ﷺ, from his father to Adam alayhi salam, there is no interruption of the bloodline. And how is a bloodline interrupted? A bloodline is interrupted through having a child without marriage, without the valid Islamic way. Having a child, an illegitimate child. This is the way that the bloodline is interrupted, is by having an illegitimate child. So none of the people, or none of the lineage of the Prophet ﷺ was through unlawful sexual intercourse. The Prophet ﷺ is the slave of Allah. This means he is the creation of Allah, and in this is the creed of the Muslims, that we do not praise, or not praise, but we don't exaggerate about the Prophet ﷺ like the non-Muslims do. For example, about Jesus. The non-Muslims, they claim that they love Jesus and that they follow him, but they claim that he is God. Or they claim that he is a partner to God. Or they claim that he is the Son of God. All those things are blasphemous. The Muslims, we don't do that. It's something ingrained, part of our creed, that we emphasize and we highlight the fact that the Prophet ﷺ is a slave of Allah. He is a property, he is a creation. He is a creation of Allah. And his messenger to all humans and jinn. This is something that is specific to the Prophet ﷺ, that the other prophets, it wasn't like that for them. Meaning what? Meaning that for the other prophets, Angel Jibreel alayhi salam, he would come to them and he would say to them, you are a prophet sent to the people of such and such. There will be a specified people in a specified group. And this does not mean that they would only preach to those people, that those prophets would only bring the message to those people. No, that doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that a prophet would, just because someone wasn't from that group of people that they were sent to, that they wouldn't give them the message. That doesn't mean that. It just means that when they were told, when they received the revelation, the angel Jibreel, he told them, you have been sent to the people of such and such people, such and such tribe, such and such group, right? For Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Angel Jibreel told him, you have been sent to all the people. So this is the difference. This is the distinction that the Prophet alayhi wasallam, that he received through that. Through being told that, one of the distinctions. Because the Prophet ﷺ, there's a list of things that it's specific to him. A list of things that he was specified with, that he was distinguished with, because he is the greatest prophet, greatest messenger, the last prophet, the last messenger, and he is the greatest creation. So Allah Ta'ala honored him with specific things that are specific to him only. One of them is that when Angel Jibreel told him that he is receiving the revelation, he told the Prophet ﷺ, you have been sent to all the people. and to all humans and jinn. Not just to a specific demographic, not just to a specific tribe, not just to a specific group of people, to everyone. But keep in mind that the other prophets, even though the people that they were sent to was specified, they did not exclude anyone. Even though the prophets, they were specified with certain groups of people that they were to preach to, that they were to call to Islam, that doesn't mean that they did not preach to other people. So, to keep that in mind. It's something that some people they misunderstand, and it's important for it to be understood correctly. And it's not like if somebody wanted to know the truth, if somebody came to them that wasn't from those people, they wouldn't turn them away. SubhanAllah. Nobody should ever think that. Nobody should ever think that any prophet of God would tell someone, oh, I'm not going to tell you the message, or you're not from the people that I was sent to, so go away, or something like that. No, the prophets, they would teach everyone. Reading on. Subsequently, i.e., following the belief in the prophethood of Muhammad, one must believe he was born in Mecca. There's a footnote here after the name Muhammad. That is, after satisfying the primary obligation of believing in the prophethood of Muhammad, one must believe any of these other things. And the primary obligation, like we mentioned before, is the person has to believe that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah, and that Muhammad is his messenger, that he received the revelation. This is the basic primary belief, how a person would become a believer, would be judged as a Muslim, and would be, if they died that way, would be saved from dwelling forever in hell. And this is the virtue of Islam. What does Islam get you? What is the value of Islam? When you die, if you die with it, you're saved from going to hell forever. What does that mean? That means that at one point or another, you're going to paradise. And then once you enter, that's it. Once you enter paradise, you never exit. How do you get there? Just by believing in and dying with La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah. So that's the minimum. So following the belief in the prophethood of Muhammad, and then once you believe that this man, Muhammad, he is a prophet, that he received the revelation, what follows that? And if you believe that he's a prophet that received revelation, then you believe these other things too. What is left, what does that mean? That means that once you are told, once you are taught from a trustworthy source that this is the case, then you believe that too. And if you believe no one deserves to be worshipped except the Creator, and that this man named Muhammad is a prophet that he received revelation, then once you are taught, for example, that he is born in Mecca, you believe that too. So he was born in Mecca, and his mother is Amina, the daughter of Wahb, from the clan of Zuhra from Quraysh. And he was sent as a messenger therein, i.e., the prophetic revelation came down unto him while he was an inhabitant of Mecca. This occurred while he was in the cave of Hira. And this is being specifically accurate and precise. Because why? Because this cave, Hira, it's technically outside of Mecca. So literally, technically, he received the revelation while he was outside of Mecca. But why does it say he was sent as a messenger therein? It means he received the revelation while he is an inhabitant of Mecca. Because where was he living? He was living in Mecca. And this is where he was inhabiting. Now the cave of Hira, some background on that. The cave of Hira, the Prophet ﷺ, before he received the revelation, and this is something that is common with the prophets, is that before they receive the revelation, before the angel actually comes down and tells them that they are prophets, the prophets have it in them that they have, number one, they have the correct belief already. This is something that they have in their hearts the entire time. They have the correct belief the entire time. They're inspired to have the correct belief. They have the correct belief about Allah. They don't worship other than Allah. This is something for sure, 100%. But also on top of that, the prophets, they are inspired to have these times where they're doing something that's like an act of worship. They do something that's like an act of worship, because before they receive the revelation, they don't have the details of the law. They don't have the details of the law. So it's not specified like how it is specified after revelation, where they do the sujood and they have the prayer in a specific format. Before they receive the revelation, they do something like that without that revealed format, without the revealed format. They do something that's like a worship, an act of worship, without the specific format, without the same format as they get after they get the revelation. So the Prophet ﷺ, he used to have a routine, a habit, where he would go out to the cave of Hira for some time, for like a couple of days, every so often. Every so often. He would do that, and he would do worship. Not in the specific format that he did after he received the revelation, but he did something like an act of worship. And he used to stay in the cave for some days, and he would, take some food and things with him. And on one of those trips, when he was in the cave, when he was doing the acts of worship, that's when Angel Jibreel came. So that's how he was in the cave, because it was his habit, it was his routine that he used to go in the cave to do acts of worship before he received the revelation. And then at one point in time, when he was in one of those trips, Angel Jibreel came. And then you know the story from there. Angel Jibreel came in the form of a man. He told him, Iqra. The Prophet ﷺ said, Ma ana bi qari, which means I am not someone who does qira'ah, because Iqra can mean read or recite. And so then Angel Jibreel, he hugged him, squeezed him, and he gave him some power. And then he said again, Iqra, and then he said, Ma ana bi qari. He said again, I am not a qari. And then Jibreel hugged him again a second time, gave him more power. And then he said again, Iqra. He said, Ma ana bi qari. He hugged him the third time, and then he recited the first 5 verses of Al-Alaq. That was the first revelation. So that's what it means that he was sent as a messenger therein, while he was living in Mecca, because the actual spot which he actually received the revelation was inside the cave of Hira. He migrated from, and you can still go to that cave today, by the way. You can still go to that cave today. It is a blessed place. It is a place where the Prophet ﷺ, where he was. And you go into that cave, it's small. I've never been there, but the people that have been there, they told me that it's small. And if when you're sitting in it, you're looking out of it, you can see the Kaaba at a certain time. But then I think they built something recently where it blocks the view. But before they had built whatever they built, you can see the Kaaba from there. He migrated from Mecca to Al-Madinah. Reading on, the Prophet ﷺ, we have to believe that he migrated from Mecca to Al-Madinah Al-Munawwara, following the orders of Allah. Following the orders of Allah, not running away. Not running away. it cannot be the migration to Medina from Mecca. The migration from Mecca to Al-Medina cannot be painted. It cannot be painted as running away. The migration from Mecca to Al-Medina cannot be painted as running away. Because obviously that's not the case. The Prophet ﷺ, he's the most courageous. Reading on, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam then died and was buried therein, in Al-Medina, in the chamber of Lady Aisha, may Allah raise her rank, radiyallahu anha. Excuse me. Lady Aisha is the best woman that Allah created after those 5 women. After the 5 women, the best woman is Aisha. And this is an extra credit information for tomorrow when I ask for recap and I ask you this list. Inshallah, everyone will have it memorized. The best women in order: Maryam bint Imran, the mother of Jesus. Then Fatima bint Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam wa radiyallahu anha, the daughter of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Lady Khadija, after that, the first wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then Asiya, the wife of the Pharaoh. Now, you might think the Pharaoh, he was not Muslim, and Asiya, she's among the greatest, the top 5 greatest women of all time. They're Muslims. How could that be? Well, because during those times, in the Islamic law during that time, it was permissible for a Muslim woman to be under a non-Muslim, to be married to a non-Muslim. And then after Asiya is Aisha. Lady Aisha, she is the most knowledgeable woman of this nation, and she benefited a lot from being married to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And she was 18 years old when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam died. When we say he was buried in the chamber of Lady Aisha, what does it mean, the chamber? Basically, it means her room. One day, inshallah, I'm going to show you on this thing here. I'm going to show you a picture. But the way that the Prophet's mosque was, so let's say that this is the mosque area. Then, outside of what's considered the mosque, and adjacent to it, were these rooms. It was like a room, a place like a room. And it was for the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Aisha's room was like the closest one to the minbar. And the Prophet would come in directly from there. But that's where the Prophet ﷺ, when he was sick, because he was sick before he died, and he died from a sickness, and he was being nursed in her room. And he asked permission from his other wives to be nursed in her room. And they all agreed, and they said yes, and they didn't disagree about that. Immediately, just because the Prophet ﷺ, just because he asked for it, they said yes, without going back and forth. And so he stayed in her room, and as he was dying, she was holding him. So, and when he died, she was holding him. And so, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Al-Anbiya yudfanuna haythu yuqbadun. That the prophets, they are buried wherever they died. So that's where he died, so that's where he was buried. So Aisha's room, she was buried, or he was buried there. And so obviously Aisha, she had high hopes that, since it was her room obviously, that she would get buried there too. And yes. Huh? حيث يقبضون. This is a hadith. And so she wanted to get buried there. But then her dad, Abu Bakr, when he died, he was buried there. And she was still hoping to get buried there. But then when Umar, when he was, because he didn't die right away, our Master Umar. And inshallah, we'll have classes where we talk about the history. It's important to know how these things happen. Because these were real people that lived real lives. And Umar, he got stabbed like 16 times with a poisonous dagger while he was in the prayer, while he was praying the Subh prayer, while he was leading the Subh prayer for the people. And he was the Khalifa, he was the Muslim ruler. And he didn't die right away. Some people, they went after the assailant who was a non-Muslim, a fire worshipper, non-Muslim. Some other Muslims that were praying, they went after the assailants, and they got stabbed too, and they got killed. But eventually, that guy, he killed himself. That fire worshipper killed himself. But our Master Umar, he didn't die right away. Guess what he did? He finished the prayer. He finished praying after being stabbed 16 times. And obviously he's lying down and things, but he still did it. But yeah, he didn't die right away. And as he was dying, he sent a request to Lady Aisha, basically saying like, you know, let me get buried there. Let me get buried next to Abu Bakr, in that where they were. And she obviously wanted that spot for herself, but she gave it up. Lillahi ta'ala. When you hear these stories of the history, it's very interesting. Anyhow, this is important to know that the Prophet ﷺ, he died in Lady Aisha's room. And so you know what type of high status she has. The Prophet ﷺ, he wanted to be nursed in her room, and he wanted to stay there, and he eventually died there, and he was buried there. So whoever claims that they love the Prophet ﷺ and that they love his family, then there's no way that they can talk bad about Aisha, because there are some sick people. They claim that they love Ahlul Bayt. They claim that they love the family of the Prophet ﷺ, yet they curse his most beloved wife. Subhanallah. Strange people. Yes. Yeah, he was, yes. on her left might be like misleading as if he was sitting, but she was holding it. Like his head, she was holding his head. So I envisioned it like he was lying down and she was holding his head. No. Moreover, continuing on, moreover, it, i.e. believing that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, necessitates believing that he was truthful in everything he told about and conveyed from Allah. And he does not in any circumstance err in what he conveys, whether it's regarding the historical accounts of the previous nations and the beginning of creation, rules of permissibility or prohibition, or prophecies of future occurrences. This is something also that is an essential part of the Islamic belief, is that we have to know 100% without a doubt. We have to know 100% without a doubt that everything the Prophet ﷺ told us about regarding the past is true. Everything that the Prophet ﷺ told us about regarding the rules of permissibility or prohibition is true 100%. Yani, without any room for doubting or skepticism. That everything that the Prophet ﷺ told us about what will happen in the future is true 100%. Without there even being 1% of doubt about that. Because this is the religion, it revolves around what the Prophet ﷺ told us, what he informed us about. How else would we know about Judgment Day if the Prophet ﷺ didn't tell us? How else would we know about what's halal and what's haram if the Prophet didn't tell us? How else would we know about what are the things that we can eat and what are the things that we can't eat if the Prophet didn't tell us? How else would we know about the prayers that we have to do or the fasting that we have to do if the Prophet ﷺ didn't inform us? How else would we know about what's the best way to dress and the best way to sleep and the best way to do your day-to-day activities if the Prophet ﷺ never informed us? There'd be no way for us to know those things except through the Prophet ﷺ. So this is why the credibility of the Prophet ﷺ has to remain 100% untarnished. So that's how the prophets were made. They're made so that their credibility is untarnished, so that their credibility, so there's no doubt about what they said. Because how do we know, for example, that what happens to us after we're buried, what happens to us in the grave, that the angels exist, that the jinn exists? How else do we know about that? Because the Prophet told us. And so this is what, since that's what we have to follow, it has to be that everything that he said regarding the revelation is 100% true without any doubt. There can't be any room for error, not even human error. Yani Allah Ta'ala made the Prophets ﷺ, made all the Prophets so that they don't make these mistakes. Because even if it was possible that they made even one mistake in any of the things that they said about the revelation, then it would take away the credibility from everything. Because then now you have that percentage of error, and how could you be sure about any single thing that it wasn't, let's say, a mistake? If somebody claimed that it was possible for a prophet to make a mistake about the revelation, even if it was a small percentage, then anyone could say, well, how do we know that such and such rule wasn't from that percent, wasn't from that mistaken percent? So it will take away the credibility of the entire belief system, which obviously is insane. Obviously it's something that it can never be, because it has to be that the correct belief system, the correct, accurate laws, that it has to be that they're available to us. Because there's no more prophets coming. There's no new revelation coming. So this final revelation has to remain intact. Reading on. As for what he told of the worldly matters, which were not revealed to him by Allah, it is possible for him to make mistakes. As for the worldly matters that the Prophet ﷺ spoke about, that was not revealed to him by Allah, then in that we say it's possible that he makes a mistake. So in that sense, in that case, whatever the Prophet ﷺ spoke about, not through the revelation of something of the dunya, that is, we'll say, in that case, yes, the human error exists. It's possible that he made a mistake about that. About a dunya matter, that's not through revelation. This is the important part to remember. Something about the dunya, not related to the religion, and it's not through revelation. Because sometimes the Prophet ﷺ would speak about a dunya matter through revelation. It would be revealed to him something about the dunya matter. He would speak about it through the revelation. In that case also, he never made a mistake. Only it's possible that he made a mistake in speaking about something of the dunya that's not through the revelation. What's an example of that? An example of that is documented. That the companions, they came to the Prophet ﷺ and they were asking him about advice of how to do something with the palm trees, like I don't know if this is the correct term, pollinate the palm trees, to make the palm tree reproduce, right? So they asked him and he told them to do something, or he told them to leave something out. He told them to leave something out because the people that work in that, they usually do a certain process to it. And instead the Prophet ﷺ told them to leave it, let the thing happen, let's say, on its own, without including that process. And that was without the revelation. It wasn't revealed to the Prophet ﷺ to tell them that. He just told them that because this is what he told them to do. And it turned out that they didn't get any those palm trees. They didn't get pollinated. They didn't reproduce. And so they came back to the Prophet ﷺ. They told him what happened. He told them that in the matters that have to do with the dunya that are not the revelation, then in these things it's possible that I'll be correct about it. But when it comes to the revelation, then this is something that undoubtedly you have to go by. And he told them that you about that worldly matter, that do what it is that your experience tells you is the thing that you should do. And so this incident with the Prophet ﷺ is documented, and it proves, and the bottom line is, it proves that when it comes to something in the dunya that's not the revelation, it's possible that the Prophet ﷺ would make a mistake. Everything else, there's no possibility that the Prophet made an error or a mistake in it. So there's no possibility that the Prophet made a mistake in revelation, and there's no possibility that the Prophet made a mistake in conveying the revelation. There's no possibility that the Prophet ﷺ made a mistake in the religion. Clear on that? And we'll stop here. And in the next class, inshallah, we'll talk about some of the things that the Prophet ﷺ conveyed to us. And this is important to know because why? Because if we're saying that this man, Muhammad ﷺ, he's a prophet, and that means that everything that he said from the revelation is true, without any doubt, without that being a mistake, without the possibility of that being wrong somehow, then among the things he told us about is the torture of the grave, the enjoyment of the grave, the questioning of the two angels, resurrection, assembly, judgment day, reckoning, reward, punishment, the balance, hellfire, the bridge, the basin, all these things that are coming for sure. Just that first one, torment in the grave, subhanAllah. One of our teachers, he said one time, he said, if somebody told you that Right when you walk out of the door, there's going to be someone outside the door, and they're going to hit you with a bat, with like a baseball bat. And there's nothing you can do about it. You can't escape it, and you can't avoid it. Wouldn't you, let's say, dread that thing? Wouldn't you be afraid of that thing? Wouldn't you do everything in your power to avoid getting that consequence? And most of us would say yes, because nobody wants to get beat with a bat. And so the torture of Allah Ta'ala is much more severe than that. So it helps to think. But thinking about the grave by itself, for the intelligent Muslim, it is a great motivator, and it is a great way for the Muslim to discipline himself, to make himself have discipline. Because as you know, not always you're going to be motivated. Let's say not always you're going to have that feeling or that mood that you're going to do everything the right way. Sometimes you're in a mood where you feel like you're weak, or you feel like your energy is low, or you feel like you're weak. But your discipline is what will get you through. Doing what you have to do, doing what you're supposed to do, because you're supposed to do it, or because you have to do it, even if you're not in an energetic mood, that's what will save you. And one thing that will push you to that is knowing that all these things are inevitable. Death and going into the grave is inevitable. It's something you can't escape, something you can't go around. And since that's the case, since you have to go through it anyway, at least you can make sure that you'll be good when you get to the other side. Because whatever pain or fear that you feel, let's say as you're dying, or just the thought of dying, but imagine going into the grave and it being squeezed, or it being very dark, or being eaten by the insects and the creatures. That'll be more scary than being happy and the grave being illuminated and the grave being widened and having the fragrance of paradise in the grave. So you can work now so that your situation when you're in the grave, it'll be a good one. So you don't have, after death, you will have no fear. So that after you die, you'll have no fear. As you're going through death, you'll have fear just for a small time, and then. But if you did good while you're alive, if you're a certain type of Muslim, when you see the angel of death is going to tell you something that's going to make you not afraid anymore. Once you see the angel of death and he tells you, have the good news that you are accepted by Allah, then you're not afraid of dying anymore. All you want to do is to die. SubhanAllah. We ask Allah Ta'ala to make us die as perfect Muslims and to make our final words La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. If there are no questions, we'll conclude. طيب نهلل لا إله إلا الله اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم رب اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات وبارك الله فيكم.